Reading, Son's Heir, Death's Guardian 2, A Hero's Peril by Engineer Forever. Link to the story in the description.
Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto or Percy Jackson and the Olympians. In the Olympians' council chambers, the Olympians, the 7 heroes, Nico D'Angelo and Thalia Grace the lieutenant of Artemis Hunters eagerly awaited the goddess of the hearth to begin reading the long-awaited sequel. Hestia cleared her throat. Once more and the screen showed the image of the scene she read. "I'm sick of you lying to me, Whiskers. Can't you just trust me?" Thalia asked as they stood in a dark corridor. "Trouble in paradise?" Leo asked. The area lit by a torch. She was wearing his white and red flame-covered jacket, a black shirt and black jeans underneath it. Around her neck was a cord with her tree adorned with the golden fleece, representing her first year at Camp Half-Blood. Thalia gave a light smile to that. She still had the bead with her pack. "I do, Thalia-chan," Naruto retorted. He wore his usual carpenter jeans with 2 kunai pouches on either thigh, and a plain orange shirt with a black arrow pointing up. Around his neck was the same cord, a different pendant hanging from it, one of a silver arrow representing his first quest to save his aunt. It wasn't a camp pendant, but a custom one made by his aunt in gratitude, as a way to show that he had her support. "Aw, how sweet," Aphrodite said with a touch of her cheek. Artemis seemed to smile upon that as well. The blonde guardian continued. "I couldn't tell you about him then because it wasn't safe to. We were on a quest." "Then why didn't you tell me afterwards?" Thalia shot back, her eyes filling with tears as she looked at him. "I had a right to know." "Oh," said Annabeth, getting a feeling of what this was about. It was someone who had blonde hair and blue eyes, and was seated not too far from her. "You don't think I know that?" Naruto said to her with as much anger at himself that he had with the situation he was now in. "There was no safe time for me to tell you. Rai Gigi might have killed me on the spot if I did." Zeus seemed unsure about that. "Well, maybe you should have anyway," Thalia cried out. "He's my brother, Naruto, and you've known he was alive this whole time." "There it is," Thalia grunted and her eyes narrowed while fists clenched. Jason frowned slightly, unsure what to think of the situation. "And it's been tearing me up inside that I couldn't tell you, Thalia-chan," Naruto tiredly explained, grabbing her shoulders as he spoke to her. His words became muffled and unintelligible, but they resulted in the girl opening and closing her mouth before embracing him in a hug, burrowing her head in his chest. "Well, it seems like you'll make through it," Apollo smiled brightly. Thalia still looked upset. They stayed like that before the ground shook around them. "Dark. Oh, be quiet, Leo," said Piper as she frowned at the son of Hephaestus. "It was kind of touching. Thus no need to ruin it." Naruto's eyes snapped open and he shot upwards in his bed within Camp Half-Blood's 13th cabin. His chest heaved lightly with each pant and he put his left hand to his head. Groaning, he squeezed his eyes shut and plopped back down on his bed. That was the 5th time since April that he's had that dream, and like the 4 times before, he was going to go mad all the upcoming day trying to figure out what the hell it meant. "That I'm pissed and your balls are going to fry?" Thalia, Artemis frowned at the crude language. "What?" He sat up once again, this time stretching and yawning as he did so. His own path down insanity could be put aside for now. There was some shuffling at the foot of his bed and Naruto smiled down at his pet and what some of the campers were referring to as his symbolic animal. "Foreshadowing," Athena claimed. Reaching down, the blonde guardian scratched the large dog-sized Smilodon cat behind his left ear, earning himself a deep rumbling purr in thanks. According to some of Annabeth's books she had acquired from her father's library, Ranger and his siblings were still in their youths and would grow to stand at a good 4 feet in height and about 10 feet in length with about 1 ton of muscle spread throughout their body. "Lucky," Annabeth cooed to the picture. She wanted one now, damn it. Percy looked at his girlfriend warily. The only downside to this information was that Ranger loved to cuddle, and Naruto wasn't 100% positive, but he was pretty sure his legs wouldn't be able to handle a 2,000-pound cat lying across them. Soon he'd have to start pushing the dog like cat off of his bed and convince Ranger to sleep on the floor. "Still want one?" Percy asked. "Yes." "Morning, Range." Naruto greeted the now yawning prehistoric animal before slipping out of the bed and grabbing his clothes. He then went to the cabin's bathroom, and after double-checking, entered when he was sure the younger of the D'Angelo siblings wasn't using it. After his quick shower, Naruto exited the bathroom while pulling his camp half-blood shirt on, pulling his camp necklace out and looking at the silver arrow that dangled from it. "What does it mean, Auntie-Arte?" wondered the reincarnated god as he slipped his combat sandals on. He walked to the bedroom of his charges, knocking twice lightly before entering with Ranger in tow. The room was slate gray, similar to the throne room of Hades when said god wasn't trying to be intimidating with his obsidian throne and pillars. Nico was already up, sitting at his sister's bedside with a worried look on his face. "What's going on?" Nico asked quietly with a frown. After their trip to the underworld over the winter to meet their father and stepmother, and Naruto's own mother who absolutely adored them. "Aw, ain't that sweet," said Thalia as she smirked at Nico. "Not now," the death boy said with a frown. He was worried about what was going on with his other sister. Considering her company without children, Bianca had come down with an unrecognizable disease that Naruto, for the life of him, couldn't make heads or tails of. "No," Nico said, slowly shaking his head in disbelief. No. His other got his sister back, and now he was going to lose her to some disease. "Nico, relax," Hazel said to him, but it did very little. One day she'd have a fever, the next she'd be as cold as the dead. The day before she was puking up black sludge, and the day before that she walked around drunker than a centaur after the annual party pony get-together. Hades held a face of grim while Nico looked to be in a panic. Don't ask how Naruto knew what that was like, because that was a really weird summer. So he went with the party ponies, huh? Percy mused. Geez, what hadn't this guy done? "How are you feeling today, B-chan?" Naruto asked softly as he knelt down next to her, placing a hand on her arm and trying to once more get an accurate reading on what the hell was wrong with his charge. Since he was young, Naruto had been blessed with the ability to accurately determine an injury or illness to keep himself alive. It was a very rare ability ingrained in the core of every descendant of Apollo. The demigods blinked. They had never heard of that before. When he asked why none of his other siblings had gotten this perk yet, Apollo explained that they hadn't earned it, which Naruto sadly understood. Apollo, despite loving all his children, had an ego the size of, if not larger than, Olympus, and only the most impressive of his children would unlock the ability. Meh, we all do that with the most impressive of our kids. Ares shrugged. He wasn't going to lie. He liked some of his brats more than others. Naruto has had to brave loneliness and discrimination for the earliest years of his life, both of which were challenges no child of Apollo had yet to face. Sure, some of them had moms who could care less, but at least they knew who their parents were. "This is very true," said Apollo as he nodded. "Like crap," the now pale girl said honestly with a small smile before lifting her arm to cough into it. Naruto smiled back at her gently while Ranger sat next to the girl's brother, nudging at the boy's arm with his head and trying to snap him out of the funk the empathic prehistoric cat could sense. Nico started scratching the giant cat behind the ears and frowned when Bianca's coughing didn't stop until after a good 15 minutes. The demigods held grimaces at the sight. Naruto formed his favorite hand seal and summoned a cage bunshin, looking at it and ordering, "Take care of her." "No duh, Oyabun," the clone replied with a roll of his eyes. "I mean it, no slacking off," sternly instructed the caster. The clone saluted, looking himself in the eye for any sign of insubordination, since you just couldn't tell with clones half the time. "There's a reason to not having them, Annabeth," said Percy with a smirk. "Still want them," his girlfriend grumbled back. Naruto then turned to Nico. "Alright, let's let Bianca get some rest, Nico." "Later, Bianca," Nico quietly said as he and Ranger stood up to leave the room. "Feel better?" "Thanks, Nico," the girl weakly replied before smiling at Naruto. "You too, Naruto." "Just rest, B-chan," softly replied her guardian as he ruffled her hair lightly, getting swatted away for the action. Chuckling, he turned and left after his other charge, who looked too depressed to actually leave his sister behind. Naruto gently guided the younger boy out of the cabin and they both walked towards the dining pavilion. "Naruto," Nico's voice broke their silence, making the tall blonde look down to him. Is Bianca going to die?" Nico's stomach was churning at the very thought. "Nico, how could you ask that?" Naruto asked as they came to a stop. He put a hand on the boy's shoulder and smiled at him reassuringly. "Bianca will be back on her feet before you know it. She's a strong girl, gets it from her father, and so do you." Hades let a small smile out while Nico had his own tired one at the information. Nico smiled lightly at that before he glanced back at the cabin. "But she's been sick for so long. Are you sure your dad can't do anything?" "I've asked him for all the help he could give me, but as I've said before, not even Athena knows all," answered the blonde, patting his young charge's shoulder reassuringly. "I'll find a way to help her." "You think so?" Nico replied. "I'd bet my life on it, Ttebeo," Naruto said before looking to the side and cursing. "I thought I got rid of that." Nico stared at him in confusion but smiled as he thought about his guardian's words. If anyone could help his sister, Naruto could. He was the strongest person, aside from Mr. D, in the camp. "Well, reincarnated god and all," Apollo bragged smugly. He got some eye rolls from the other gods, but none could really refute him. The demigods nodded in agreement. "I'll hold you to that, Naruto," Nico said before grinning. "And Bianca wouldn't want me to worry. Like you said, she's strong." Naruto beamed at the younger boy's positive attitude and ruffled his hair. "There ya go, kiddo. Let's go get some grub, After a healthy breakfast courtesy of the wood nymphs and satyrs of Camp Half-Blood. Seriously, how did they make Canadian bacon so good? Naruto parted ways with Nico as the younger demigod had to go practice beginner's archery with Lee and the other members of Cabin 7. He had a free day, so to speak, and how else would he spend it but with the girl he's been dreaming about, literally. "Well, he is," Thalia admitted with a frown. So Naruto found himself standing outside of Zeus' cabin, looking at the door and wondering if he should just tell her about Jason now while she was still drowsy. "I'd do it," Leo admitted shamelessly. If it saved him an ass-kicking, well, just why not? It would be the perfect time to do so, wouldn't it? Would it change anything that he saw? Would she understand now if he explained it to her? Would the dreams stop? So many questions, but he really should just let things play out. Apollo stated, "Visions are funny things like that." Hard to say, seeing as his past life had not been talking to him lately. The day after he had the first dream was the last time he spoke with Helios. The once fated god had said he would try to find out what the dream had meant, and then poof. He was gone. No words, not even a snigger at any jokes he made. There was nothing. And that is something he should be thankful for. Hestia sniffed before resuming reading. She missed the amused smirk her younger siblings sent her. And right now, Naruto hated that he had to figure this out on his own. He looked up at the inscription of the eagle above Zeus' cabin. Taking a deep breath, Naruto raised his arm to knock on the cabin door when he heard the clattering of bronze against bronze. Turning around, he found the new beginner's swordsmanship trainer, Quintus, standing in front of his hellhound Mrs. O'Leary, who appeared as a large tank-sized black mastiff, against Percy's blade riptide with a blade of his own. Quintus was a man in his 50s, somewhat wearing a bronze chest plate over his camp t-shirt, black mountain climbing cargos and boots. Annabeth just had a sad smile on her face while Athena held a look of disappointment. "So the daughter of Athena did go and retrieve her boyfriend," Q commented from his place around Naruto's wrist. The spirit manifested itself next to the blonde as he felt some chakra filter into the bracelet. He nodded to the fight ahead of them. Jackson's been practicing his swordplay. With a stick apparently. Percy scowled at the dig at his practice ethics. The stupid fox didn't need to bring it up. Ass. "At least he's practicing," Naruto murmured before he teleported from his place outside of Zeus' cabin and reappeared between the two swordsmen. His eyes burst into gold orbs of light with two blue suns, and he caught the edges of the swords with his now glowing hands before they could collide once more. Pushing the weapons down, the blonde then fell out of his god mode as he dubbed it. Narrowing his normal unique eyes at the new teacher, Naruto spoke with disapproval. "I don't know if you know this, Quintus, but we try not to fight campers outside of activities." Sorry about that, Naruto," the older man apologized, lowering his blade and then gesturing to the hellhound. "But it seems this young man tried to kill Mrs. O'Leary." "How cruel, Percy." "Hey," Percy said with frown to Nico. If you just saw a random hellhound in the camp, you'd react, too. Besides, he got up close and personal to one his first summer. He honestly acted on instinct. I see, Naruto nodded before looking to the still amazed Percy. Waterboy, what have I told you about diving headfirst into something? Wait, Thalia stopped the story. He had a talk about that with Percy? She asked questioningly, getting some nods of agreement. Percy just crossed his arms, pouting. Make sure you have all the information before you do. Percy sheepishly answered as he recapped Riptide. Sorry, guess I jumped the gun. Don't be too hard on yourself, Naruto admonished the teen. You saw a hellhound and reacted appropriately. You just had the 1/1,000,000th of a chance of running into the one hellhound that Camp Half-Blood welcomes. Only Percy. Oh, stuff it, Nico. The waterboy grumbled. Right. So what's been new for you? Percy asked as Quintus and Mrs. O'Leary walked away. The raven-haired teen shoved Riptide's pen form back into his pocket and gave a wry grin to the older demigod. Haven't seen or heard from you since Christmas. Naruto arched a brow and crossed his arms over his chest. I've been well. Ha, that's an understatement if I've ever heard one. Q mocked as he rematerialized next to Naruto and making Percy jump. If by, well, you meant fighting off that daughter of Aphrodite's affections. Oh, which one decided to step up? Aphrodite asked as she leaned in eagerly. Trying to figure out what your dreams mean without your past life's help. Thalia looked grumpy at the reminder. Being in a relationship with a feisty demi-goddess. There were snickers all around from that, except from the pink-cheeked hunter. And trying to keep one of your charges alive, then yeah, you're doing fantastic, kid. Nico just had a large frown on his face at the reminder of his now somewhat dying sister. Great, stupid fox. Daughter of Aphrodite's affections? Percy repeated in confusion. Naruto looked away, his cheeks tinting pink lightly as his spirit companion roared with laughter. Oh yes, this girl, Drew Tan something. I should have known, Piper said as she scowled. Thalia didn't seem happy about that tidbit either. In fact, only Aphrodite seemed really happy about it. Well, you can't blame her, dear, her mother said as she smiled brightly. Has been trying to use her mother's gift on the kid any chance she gets, snorted the once monster as his massive arms crossed. Oh come on, even going as far as charm speak, talk about desperate. Piper spat out. Aphrodite said nothing, a small smile on her face. He was elbowed in the gut by Naruto, whose eyes had shut in an effort to calm himself down. Stuff it, fuzzball, growled the blonde guardian before glaring at Percy. This doesn't leave us, got it? Sure. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the fact that someone's trying to steal you away from Thalia, Percy said. Note how he says that he belongs to her, said Aphrodite as she grinned at the hunter, who just grumbled in return. Seriously, pink was somewhat a permanent color on her cheeks now, making his increased awareness of the world around him known to the two. The raven-haired demigod watched as Naruto nervously shifted from one foot to the other while Q gained a twinkle in his eye. Having heard of this sort of thing from television, Percy's mouth slightly became ajar and he stuttered out, Why, you haven't told Thalia yet, have you? What? Thalia said flatly with her eyes narrowed. Naruto looked away once more and shoved his hands into his pockets, mumbling sheepishly. It's not a big deal. Yeah, it kind of is. Oh, look at you, all jealous-like, said Piper through her snickers at the now pouting hunter. Percy opened and closed his mouth before thinking about it. Maybe he was just putting too much thought into it. Perhaps he shouldn't have spent that whole day watching his mom's soaps with her. His opinions on relationships were screwy enough as it is with his dad's situation. Too true, Percy quipped, getting Poseidon to brood a bit at the jab. From his own son, even. Ah, Percy, and Naruto, this is perfect, Chiron said as he trotted up to the two demigods. He then nodded uneasily in the spirit's direction. Kyubi. Hello pony, Q greeted with an obvious smile beneath his mask. Oh, he did not. Percy chuckled, poor Chiron. Naruto quirked a smile and Percy coughed to cover up a chuckle while Chiron harrumphed. Pony indeed, huffed the centaur before he looked at the two demigods. You both need to come with me. Is something wrong with that guy Clarice brought back? Naruto asked as he followed the centaur. Percy and Annabeth let out snickers at the slip-up while Ares scowled. Clarice, Chiron corrected, and no, it has to do with Grover. Damn, said Percy with a frown. Annabeth's giggling died out with the news of that event. Grover? Percy parroted in concern for his friend. What's wrong with Grover? Grover's fine, he's just in a bit of trouble with the Council of Cloven Elders, Chiron explained. He needs some friends to give him support. What are we waiting for? Asked the son of Poseidon before running off in a random direction. Percy, wait, you don't. Chiron sighed as the teen ran out of sight before he lamely finished. Know where we're going. Kid's got heart. You have to give him that, Naruto said with a smile as he and his snickering spirit followed the centaur to recover the teen. Not much brains though, Annabeth teased. Hey. Annabeth just kissed his cheek. Well, I guess I'll have to be the brain for both of us. She smiled coyly at him, getting her boyfriend to blush. Athena pursed her lips at the byplay. Once they had managed to rescue Percy from his misguided sense of direction, the two demigods were dropped off in a glade deep in the forests of Camp Half-Blood. Q dissipated back into his bracelet and Chiron left to resume other duties, aware that his presence wouldn't help Grover, but may hinder his argument. Percy and Naruto walked over to Annabeth and Clarice's side, the eldest demigod nodding to the two girls while Percy opened his mouth to speak, only to be shushed by Annabeth, who was comforting a petite elfish girl crying green tears. Percy stared at the amber-haired girl, trying to make heads or tails of where he had seen her before. Taking pity on the younger teen, Naruto leaned over and whispered. That's Juniper, Grover's girlfriend. She's a dryad. Grover has a girlfriend? Percy hissed in surprise, only to be silenced as one of the older satyrs banged a gavel. The four demigods hushed while Juniper tried to stifle her tears. As it is, Grover Underwood, we cannot pass this off as evidence to a lead, one of the satyrs said. But since you believe so strongly in it, petitioning 5 times to have a whole group of searchers to unite, interjected another with a disapproving snort. A waste of resources. Regardless, seeing as you find it to be so important, we agreed on a decision. The first satyr started again after glaring at the one who interrupted him. We will give you 1 week to find Pan, and if you fail, you must sacrifice your searcher's license. Naruto's fists clenched and he glared at the 3 satyrs. He knew damn well that his cousin was still alive, if only just, and that Grover had a strong connection to the god of the wild. Then say something, Percy scowled at the blonde. Knowing Pan, he probably had the kid sworn to secrecy, said a weakly smiling Hermes. He wasn't sure how deep it was, but based on some of the conversations they used to have when using Sage Mode, Pan assured him it was a pretty deep connection. One that almost reminded him of something he had felt before, but he couldn't put his finger on it. This meeting is adjourned, the Cloven Elders said as one before they left the glade. Naruto followed the others to Grover's side, his anger at the limit. Seriously, one more thing happens today and he might just explode. Oh Grover, Juniper cried out as she hugged the shell-shocked satyr. Grover, speak to me. I got this, Percy said with a hint of glee before he slapped the satyr upside the head. Grover yelped and glared at the innocent smile his friend gave him before he recalled what had caused him to go into shock. Karma, ain't it a bitch? Percy said mockingly, remembering how Grover upslapped him in the last book. Immediately he went into panic mode. Oh Pan, how am I supposed to find Pan in a week when no one's found him in centuries? I'm never going to find him. I might as well give up. Percy, once more, Naruto sighed as he tried to not be too irritated at his friend. He had a very good reason to freak out after all, considering his dream was on the line. Gladly, chirped the son of Poseidon as he whacked his friend once more upside the head, snapping him from his negative thoughts. You are taking far too much joy in that, Annabeth pointed out to him, but the sea child just shrugged. Annabeth slapped Percy on the arm and glared at him, making the boy wither under her glare. Like he should, the blonde child of wisdom nodded. What? Naruto said I should. So easy to jump blame, typical. Athena rolled her eyes, ignoring the way Poseidon glowered at her. Only because I might accidentally smack his head off, grumbled the blonde before he took a deep breath. Placing a hand on Grover's shoulder, Naruto smiled at one of his first friends in the real world. "You've got this. Gee, who's the one that got Thalia-chan and Annie back to camp?" "You." Annabeth and Thalia cheered. "Me?" Grover asked. Naruto grinned and patted the relatively young satyr's shoulder. "Right." The blonde then opened his mouth to say something else when he froze. The five stared at him as his smile suddenly faded away and his face settled into a scowl. Due to their close proximity, Grover started to bawl fearfully as the blonde released a large wave of ki. Juniper had already bolted for the trees, and the three demigods were struggling with their own fight-or-flight instincts. "Ooh, someone's pissed," Ares grinned. "Shit," swore the eldest demigod before he vanished in a flash of light. A few seconds after he vanished, a yawning Thalia walked into the clearing wearing black jeans and an AC/DC shirt. "Sorry I'm late," she apologized as she walked up to the group. Chiron said it was an emergency and Whiskers never showed up for the wake-up call he promised to give me. "Subtle," said Jason as he smiled at his sister, who blushed at the insinuation of it all. With the Valentine special clear in her mind, her blush grew somewhat brighter. The daughter of Zeus' electric blue eyes blinked before she waved her hands in front of Grover's face and then turned to the three frozen demigods. "Hello, guys, did I miss something?" "Well yeah, kind of, but no big deal." Percy waved off jokingly. Thalia just scowled at him. Naruto reappeared in the D'Angelo siblings' bedroom, just at the foot of Bianca's bed. His clone was kneeling at her side, cleaning away some dark green liquid that was coming out of the corner of her mouth, nose, ears and eyes. Nico's heart was clenching in a vice grip. Gods, what was happening to his sister? Appearing at his clone's side, the blonde placed his hand over the groaning Bianca's. Naruto frowned when he couldn't determine what was wrong, just as before. This was getting really bad. He might have to do more than just pray to his father for help. He might have to go to, insert slight shudder here, the Oracle of Delphi. Moving to the other side of the bed, Naruto placed a hand on Bianca's head, frowning when her forehead didn't burn him, but gave him a few chills. "Interesting," said Apollo, his fingers interlaced as he leaned forward with intrigue. Removing his hand didn't stop the chills, but now the room started to spin and the reincarnated god stumbled back before falling onto Nico's bed. His head collided with the wall behind Nico's bed and he grunted before passing out. "Contagious?" Hermes questioned. "Nah, probably a vision moment. You know my kid, just keeping the awesome on the up and up." Apollo smiled wolfishly. He awoke in a world of darkness before he heard a familiar throat-clearing sound. Turning around, the glowing form of Helios sat in a meditative position, his eyes shut. Slowly they opened to reveal two solid white orbs and the world around him returned to the bright white room he knew so well. Before Naruto could ask what was going on, Helios' mouth opened and the god spoke in a mixture of voices, both female and male. "Hey, he's giving a prophecy. That's my shtick now hell, it was agreed on." Apollo ranted with a pout. He still pulled out a notepad to write it down, though displeasure was obvious on his face. "A life risked for the Ghost King's precious one." "That's me and Bianca." Nico frowned, making Hazel grab his hand in support. "The family reunites after the Roman attacks the sun." "That's us," said Jason with a bright smile to his sister. He would get to meet her sooner. And, he was slightly jealous of his other. Thalia didn't become a hunter, thus they could probably be together more often than he and his own sister were. But which Roman attacks the sun? I mean, it clearly means Naruto, but wouldn't that start a war? Piper asked nervously. She was also frowning at not being able to see her boyfriend as soon, or not at all. "Who knows?" Leo grimaced. He did not want to see a war happen between the camps in that universe like one was happening here. 3 Take the fire steed neither west nor east. "Probably Zephyr," Annabeth pointed out. She cupped her chin in thought. "But where to, north or south?" "The pinwheel's spiral blade revives the leaf's dreaded beast." "Well, that doesn't sound good," said Percy with a frown. "Rescue comes from the power of lightning and thunder." "Guess we have to save the day, EHJ?" Thalia asked as she smirked to her brother. He gave the same grin back and their sire sat up a bit taller. "The shadow slug defeats death with a gift of wonder." "Oh, and who is this slug?" Hades mused in interest. After the Guardian's past returns twice more. 2 brothers shall fall during the labyrinth's war. Well, that's not ominous at all. Percy frowned. Lee and Castor had died. They were brothers. But this was about brothers to Naruto. Was this Lee going to die too, and someone else from Apollo? Apollo's mind was on the same track as he mulled over the possibilities of that last line's meaning. Helios' glowing eyes faded away back into their normal blue and sun-filled orbs. He blinked several times before groaning, putting his hands to his head. My head is pounding worse than the time I drank Dionysus' mixed batch of wine. The god in question sighed. Good times, he said with a lick of his lips in remembrance. Blinking, he stared at his incarnation that was gaping at him, making the god run his hands over his face and ask frantically, What is it? Is there something on my face? And no, Naruto answered, making his past life look at him in confusion. Gaining a sense over himself, Naruto shook his head in disbelief before he continued. Why, you just gave me a prophecy. Dum dum dum, Apollo cried out dramatically. Ow, he said, rubbing his head. Artemis lowered her hand, a scowl on her face. I'm back, Tilda. Also, my laptop had an accident trying to date a cup of water, I told him. No. She's too loose, man. But he didn't listen, and well, he got a aqua TD. He should have worn a rubber. So most of my other stories may be in danger, but I should be able to get the hard drive recovered along with my new laptop. One who will most likely listen to me. Stupid horny electronics. Chiron stared at the blonde demigod in befuddlement, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Percy made a click noise. And that is forever burned into my mind, he said in awe. He never thought that he would ever see that. It was just sweet. The others followed his example. Just moments before, the one the minor gods were calling Helios Heir had stormed into the big house, promptly scaring off Mr. D, who split the moment he saw who had shoved the door open. The god of wine bristled with gritted teeth at the taunting smirks and snickers sent his way, and told him that he had to get to Camp Jupiter. Now this just got interesting, said Jason, who leaned forward a bit in anticipation. The centaur was at a loss for words, completely surprised that the blonde even knew about the opposing camp. When he finally did get a coherent sentence, all the poor centaur could manage was, why on earth would you have to go there? I have a quest, Naruto answered promptly. He was irked that he still needed permission to leave. He was almost 23, mentally anyway, but it was annoying to know that he had to tell one of the camp directors he was leaving. Them's the rules, dude, said Leo with a sigh as a hand ran through his hair. I feel your pain. I beg your pardon? Chiron questioned as he jerked back, almost as if he were burned from the shock he was in. Did you sneak into the oracle's room? No, replied the guardian before he went to the door and shut it. Reaching into his back pocket, Naruto pulled out what looked like a notepad, tearing a piece of paper out and slapping it on the door's edge. Chiron watched, fascinated, as the paper once clean of ink became covered in intricate glowing blue runes that were beyond his abilities to decipher. A seal, said Athena, her brows coming together as she frowned, still wanting more detail into the unique art. What is that? Inquired the camp activities director. A temporary privacy seal, Naruto answered as he went to the windows and applied the same paper to them. He then jumped up and walked to the center of the ceiling, placing another next to the light that hung from it. Dropping to the center of the floor, a final seal was placed and Naruto sighed in relief. Good. Now there's no way anyone save for a god could manage to get this information. Now that is just plain useful, Annabeth said as she pouted. Seriously, she wanted to learn this sealing, but it needed chakra, which she sadly did not have. What information? Chiron asked. Naruto looked at the centaur with a serious gaze, one that belonged on a man nearly twice his age. Before he spoke, Helios' presence within me has made me into a sort of seer. Just a few minutes ago he had given me a prophecy, and for the past few months, as long as Bianca has been sick, I've been having the same dream over and over again. Having been informed of Helios' presence within the boy by Mr. D, who had been even more weary of the blonde after he found out, and other minor gods that stopped by for the latest update on said boy. Well, someone is popular, Heir commented lightly. Chiron's eyes widened, I see. That could be very good for us. Now we could get 2 quests a year and infighting between cabins might go down during the summer. Score. The Greek demigods cheered. No. Camp Half-Blood is supposed to have 1 oracle and 1 quest per summer, unless something of importance happens like Auntie Arte being kidnapped or if there is a threat to the camp, as was the case with Clarissa's quest. Naruto explained his disagreement. "Aw, that sucks," said Leo, who pouted in disappointment. "I know," Annabeth said as she nodded. She pursed her lips and admitted, "But he does raise a good point. And if the Crooked One finds out about this, I, as well as the D'Angelos, will become high-profile targets." "True," said Hades. "Him being their guardian, they would be targeted as a way to get to him." He frowned after he finished his bit, not liking that at all. Nico shared the same sentiment, frowning at the fact that Naruto, despite already doing so much for him and his sister, still had to go even beyond the extra mile than he already has. I suppose you're correct," Chiron said as he rubbed his beard in thought. "What was your prophecy?" "A life risked for the Ghost King's precious one. The family reunites after the Roman attacks the sun. 3. Take the fire steed to neither west nor east. The pinwheel's spiral blade revives the leaf's dreaded beast. Rescue comes from the power of lightning and thunder. The shadow slug defeats death with a gift of wonder. After the guardian's past returns twice more. 2 brothers shall fall during the labyrinth's war," Naruto recited as his arms crossed in a subconscious way to defend himself. The references to his homeland were far too obvious for him to ignore, and he prayed to order that the phrase shadow slug meant some sort of monster he had never heard of instead of the woman he knew could match the definition. "Oh, so he knows who the slug is, how interesting," Athena mused idly. "A life risked for the Ghost King's precious one," the centaur repeated quietly, pacing the room as he went over the prophecy in his head. He suddenly looked to Naruto and asked, "Do you require a group?" "No, I'll most likely end up with a group of 3 after getting to Camp Jupiter," the blonde said after a moment of thought. "I don't like it," Chiron stated with a frown, "this prophecy. It's 8 verses rather than 6. It's rather straightforward in the beginning, but confusing in the later verses. Not to mention the second line. You'd be attacked and Bianca's life would be forfeited." Nico licked his dry lips in worry. He's got a point. An 8-line prophecy is, while not unheard of, very rare. Apollo stated with a narrowed gaze. He wondered why it was so different before shrugging and chalking it up to his awesome son needing an equally awesome quest. "My life is going to be at risk," Naruto pointed out, referring to the prophecy, "but not lost. Not until this labyrinth war takes place. I just hope I can stop someone else's death. I may be unable to avoid my own fate, but I'll be damned before I let someone die in front of me because I was told it would happen." Dionysus gave a sad sigh. Perhaps, well, maybe both his children would make it out of this battle alive. "Maybe we can avert both lives being lost," Chiron said hopefully before scratching his beard once more. "Do you require a mode of transportation?" "And take that pile of trash you call a van?" "No thanks, I'll just get my car from Charlie," Naruto said with a wry grin as the centaur gave him a sour look for insulting the van. The blonde knew very well how low-budgeted the camp was and how they couldn't afford a more up-to-date van or any other car. "Wow, that sucks," Piper summed up, getting the other Greek demigods to nod in agreement. "We'll try and fix the budget, maybe," Hermes stated, getting some maybes from his siblings. "If that is what you wish," Chiron said after a long moment, "do you want me to inform Nico?" "No, I'll tell him myself," Naruto said as he raised 2 fingers in a leaving salute. "Yane, Chiron. Just open the door if you want to cancel out the privacy seals." He vanished in a flash of light, leaving behind an amused centaur. Chiron looked down at the seal on the floor and then to his office's door. He took a step towards the door before turning and going to his bookshelf, pulling an old copy of the Odyssey out, an old favorite of his. Removing the bookmark he had placed in the tome, Chiron grinned as he started to resume where he had left off on the 41st page. Perhaps this way he could get more than a page read. The campers snickered, seemed even Chiron got tired of them every once in a while. Naruto reappeared inside of cabin 13, just outside of the D'Angelo's room. Knocking first, he then entered after a brief moment and went to the sick Bianca's side. Where his clone once stood, now stood his younger brother Will Solace. The boy was a gifted healer, one of the best, and was third in line for the counselor's seat of Cabin 7, which is why Naruto had pulled him out of his Greek class before going to see Chiron. Putting a hand on his brother's shoulder, Naruto asked, "Any change?" "You let another camper into your cabin?" Poseidon asked his older brother. Hades just gave him a look that said to drop the matter, which the Sea King did. Poseidon still had a small smile on his face, seeing the protectiveness that Hades held for his child. Will shook his head. "She's still colder than ice, but she's stopped spewing out that green stuff. I got a small sample of her blood, but without any sort of lab I can't analyze it." That was another thing unique about Will. With his mother being a bombshell of a doctor, even Naruto had to admit that when he laid eyes on his brother's mother last winter. Thalia grumbled at the picture with narrowed eyes. Apollo was sighing with a small grin, remembering Will's mother. Hot damn, was that a nice night. Will had grown up wanting to be just like her, and his views on purely demigod healing techniques were skewed. He acknowledged that humanity had made leaps and bounds when it came to medicine, and that where myth or history may be unable to give you an answer, human ingenuity might be able to provide some clear answers. "Ah, mortals, you beautiful people you." Apollo smiled brightly at the advancements in his domain. Athena and Hephaestus nodded in agreement with him, feeling the same. Taking the vial from his brother, Naruto furrowed his brows while looking at the black and red liquid. Normally demigod blood had the same consistency and color of human blood, and anything different wasn't normal. His own blood had gained flakes of gold thanks to his unique abilities. He discovered that during a spar with Mark Andrews, where the son of Ares managed to knock a tooth out from a bash with his shield. "So now he leaks ichor?" Hazel asked, marveled by the discovery. "Seems so," Frank spoke, finally. The tooth was reattached easily. Apollo's children couldn't not have dazzling smiles after all. "Duh," Apollo drawled, flashing his own pearly whites, nearly blinding a few people in the process. But the blood that had flown out along with it had surprised him. "Could you keep an eye on her for me?" Naruto asked, making Will look up at him in confusion. "I have a quest and I think it involves finding a cure for her." Will opened his mouth to ask about the quest, only for Naruto to interrupt him. "I can't tell you about it. It's not an official quest." Will's eyes widened and he nodded in understanding. Naruto nodded back to him before he walked around Bianca's bed and knelt next to it. Placing a hand on her forehead, Naruto brushed away the girl's bangs and smiled before he spoke softly to the unconscious girl. "Hang in there, B-chan. I'll fix it." "He'd better," Hades grumbled. Standing, Naruto nodded to his brother once more. "I'll leave her in your care, Will Solace." A very small green helmet appeared above Will's head, making the boy gasp as Naruto blinked in surprise before he added, "And so does Lord Hades, it appears. Take care of her, Will." The shaken demigod nodded, unable to trust his voice as he realized what this meant. Not only was his brother asking him to watch over his charge in his stead, but Hades himself was giving him the blessing to enter and leave the cabin as he pleased. After his elder brother vanished in a flash of golden light, Will only hoped this was a temporary job, because he saw how hyper Nico could get last winter, and to be honest, this cabin gave him the creeps. "Yeah, Nico, don't mess with Will," said Percy through his snickers. Nico pouted at being his old hyperactive self. "Hopefully I won't, to an extent," he said as he smirked back at the others, getting some laughs. Next to him, Ranger released a deep meow and the demigod patted the cat on the head in an effort to reassure him that he was fine. Kind of. Nico frowned as he looked up at Naruto. He had managed to catch Nico just before he entered the Greek class. Giving Annabeth an apologetic smile, he pulled the younger demigod aside and explained to him that he had been given a top-secret quest, like the one Clarice had gone on. In a voice that held a tint of depression within it, Nico asked, "You have to leave again?" "Ah, is Whittle Nico going to miss Big Brother?" Thalia asked with a smirk, getting a scowl from her younger cousin. "Sadly, yes," Naruto sighed out. Nico seemed understanding at least, but also disappointed. In an effort to reassure the boy, he reached out and ruffled Nico's hair with a grin on his face. "But it's gonna help us make Bianca better." "Stop it," Mock complained Nico as he swatted the older blonde's hand away. To be honest, he liked the brotherly affection Naruto gave him, but in case someone was around he had to act embarrassed. That, and whenever he did it, Nico felt his stomach dance for some reason. It happened around Percy sometimes, too, which added to the confusion Nico felt. Nico's eyes widened with fear and suddenly looked very nervous. As he looked around, he was thankful that no one really seemed to notice that passage. He missed the small, hardly noticeable smirk that sprawled across Aphrodite's face. All right, chuckled out the older blonde, breaking his charge from his musing on the strange feelings he sometimes got. Naruto smiled down at Nico. My brother Will is going to be taking care of Bianca while I'm gone, so don't slack off. I'll be back before you know it with a cure. Promise? Asked the young son of Hades. Nico wasn't sure of whether he meant that Naruto would return quickly or if a cure would be found. Promise of a lifetime, Naruto assured his charge with another tussle of the boy's hair. The younger demigod once more swatted his now laughing guardian's hand away. Naruto jerked his head in the direction of the Greek class once he had quieted down and Nico groaned, trudging into the room and greeting Annabeth before taking his seat. Naruto looked into the classroom, watched as Nico easily caught up with the others, before sending a wink to his annoyed little sister, and vanishing in a flash of golden light. Annabeth smiled to Nico and said, "Seems someone's a good little learner." Nico puffed his chest out a bit before he replied, "Of course I would be if I took your classes, Professor Chase." Professor, I like that," the blonde mused with a smile tugging at her lips. Naruto reappeared well away from the location of Annabeth's class, reappearing a few feet from his charge's cabin. The person found waiting for him with her arms crossed and a glare settled on her face made him stop where he was. Someone's in trouble, Tilda, Hermes snickered along with his sunny brother. He admitted that her fitted black attire and adorably mad glare had distracted from the fact as to why she could be mad at him. Adorable, Thalia cried out with pink cheeks. It was supposed to be menacing. She started to grumble as the demigod snickered at her annoyance. Stupid whisker-faced moron. Sheepishly laughing and scratching the back of his neck, Naruto greeted his girlfriend, "Hey Thalia-chan." "Don't give me that," Thalia retorted as she stomped over to her taller boyfriend. "What got you so angry that you had managed to freeze Grover, Percy, Annie and Clarice in place?" "All I got was a few bleats out of Grover before he muttered something about Pan and ran off. Why didn't you wake me up, either?" "Oh yeah, and then there's that," Naruto grumbled, his mood falling back into its original irritation as he remembered the order given to the satyr by his superiors. Shaking the feeling off, Naruto apologetically smiled down at Thalia before giving her a hug. "Sorry about missing the morning cuddling, ow." Thalia retracted her foot from where it had stomped down on Naruto's, glaring at him with a tint of pink on her cheeks. "Don't say it out loud." "I really don't see why you're so embarrassed about it," Piper said, as she snuggled next to Jason a bit. The blonde Grace smiled back at her. Grabbing at his now throbbing toes, Naruto expertly balanced on his other foot while forcing chakra through his hands into them and sent a mock glare of his own to his volatile girlfriend. "I swear if I didn't know better you could be Ares' daughter. You're the one that suggested it." "Well, she's got the temperament," Ares said with a smirk. Thalia just gagged at the very thought. "Yeah, well I have a reputation to protect," Thalia grumbled, crossing her arms and stepping away, her pink-tinted cheeks not fading in the slightest. "Oh, look at her, acting all tough. Geez, be more open, Thalia," said Annabeth as she smirked at her friend. "You just live to annoy me, don't you?" the hunter flatly retorted. "Well, someone has to." Lowering his now recovered foot, Naruto answered her first question in an effort to get off the topic she was getting embarrassed over. "Skilled intuition," Hades said in a drawl, getting some chuckles from the gods. "As to why I freaked out the others, which I didn't know about until now, I got some bad news about Bianca's illness." Thalia looked at the blonde out of the side of her eyes, giving him a bit of an apologetic glance. She accepted that he occasionally put his duty as a guardian above their relationship, though it could be deemed a rare instance as it hardly occurred, but it was part of the reason he had her heart. "Duh," the women cooed, as Thalia gritted her teeth while clenching her seat tightly. The fact that it was because one of his charges had the most bizarre illness she'd ever heard of made it an easier pill to swallow. It just showed why he was a great choice for a guardian. Naruto Uzumaki was one of the most caring people she'd ever met, and that's why she loved him. Leo and Piper started to whistle the wedding aisle tune, making Thalia give them the deadliest of glares that promised pain. Unfortunately for her, they didn't stop since they knew she couldn't get away with it here. They were both right and very lucky. Is she all right? Thalia asked out of concern for her boyfriend's sake and because a part of her did care about her cousin. Not really when she was a hunter. Thalia frowned somewhat at the loss of a cousin and sister. She's stable, at least for now. Naruto started to reply before looking around and taking hold of Thalia's arm. Hang on, we can't talk about this here. Before she could ask him why, Naruto had pulled her close and they had once more vanished in a flash of light. They reappeared next to the pile of rocks named after her father's fist, though she felt it was more along the lines of being deer droppings. Zeus grumbled at that, as the demigod slightly snickered and the older two of the big three smirked. Not that Thalia would ever say it. Perhaps Naruto would though. He does seem the type, said Apollo as he smirked, ignoring his father's glare. Alright, no one ever hangs out at Raijiji's pile of rocks, Naruto said with a nod, ignoring the warning rumble of thunder that occurred above him. And apparently he is, Hermes agreed with a smirk. Zeus grumbled once again, furthering the amusement that Poseidon and Hades felt. Thalia fought down a smirk. Naruto's disrespect always got her to smile, and that usually put her in the same state it put him. Her boyfriend's unique eyes met hers once more and he continued where he left off. I have a quest to find a cure for her. Only 4 people know about it aside from me. Chiron, Nico, my brother Will, and now you. I'm going with you, Thalia immediately replied. She could care less who knew about this quest and who didn't. Naruto had told her of his deal with Hades and how his soul would be lost for eternity should he ever die on a quest. As long as she could stop it, Thalia had sworn to herself that she would, even if that meant going on every quest with him just to make sure he didn't die on her. Wow, how bold. Go Thalia, Aphrodite cheered with a wide smile. Thalia glowered at the goddess of love's words. Naruto groaned and took hold of his girlfriend's shoulders. Damn it, Thalia-chan, you can't go. My group will form when I get to. It'll form later. Ooh, bad phrasing, said Percy with a wince. Which part? Nico asked with mock curiosity. Simple, he said she couldn't, the waterboy answered, and a second later they both broke out into snickers. Your group will form later, huh? Thalia repeated with narrowed eyes as she pushed his hands off and poked him roughly in the chest. Just where is this quest taking you? Yes, do tell my other, Thalia said with a dark smirk on her face. Damn, Zeus' little girl is scary, Helios commented with an audible shiver, to which Naruto silently agreed with. Of course you would make a fated god scared of you, Percy deadpanned. Well, when you've got it, Thalia said, brushing imaginary dust off her shoulder. Artemis smiled proudly at that sentence. When she wanted to, Thalia could give him a glare that would fill him with fear that his bachan had once filled him with. And yet, it was part of her charm. He couldn't help but love her more for it. Seems angry sex is going to be fun for him, then. Thalia could only look on in horror at the love goddess' casual comment. Even the frigid glare of Artemis could do nothing to stop the lecherous smile on the Lady of Dove's face. I can't tell you where it's taking me, because you aren't going, Naruto sternly replied. He said no to her again. Gentlemen, salute this foolish man. Percy declared. All the boys saluted Naruto, to one of our own. Here, the boys cheered solemnly. This was one argument that Thalia was not going to win. Yes, I will, Thalia argued back childishly. Granted that their normal arguments consisted of spars and how having a god mode made him something other than a demigod. Thalia seemed to like the idea of being in a relationship with a reincarnated god more than that for some reason, probably because of her so-called lust for power that Q said she had. Of course she would like that. Heir sniffed to her stepdaughter, who in turn just glared right back at her. Though silently, Thalia did admit the idea had some appeal to it. I am going, Thalia rebutted, emphasizing her point by jabbing him in the chest with each word. Damn right. The hell you are, Naruto said as he grabbed her hand firmly and his eyes started to glow lightly. I'll be meeting the other members of my group later. Oh no, he didn't, said Hazel with a wag of her finger. And so will I, Thalia said as her eyes started to crackle with electricity as her frustration grew. Staring contest of doom, Nico cried out with giddy. In all honesty, if anyone who had been in the same room as Zeus and Apollo when they argued were to watch the two now, they would admit that both of their stubbornness was equal to that of their fathers. Prior to the recovery of Naruto from the Hidden Lands, Zeus would often demand answers as to why Apollo would slack off when he was supposed to be steering the sun. The younger god, whose strength was only just weaker than his father's, would often argue that he had everything under control and that Zeus should worry about his own domain. Zeus would retort that he was worrying about his own domain, as the sun was seen in the sky. The argument would continue until either Artemis or Heir stepped in, both of whom were the only two that wouldn't be struck by lightning or fire if they interrupted. Both Apollo and Zeus bristled at that and prepared to rebuttal, but Hera and Artemis cleared their throats and both backed down. It made the other gods snicker as Apollo pouted and Zeus silently fumed at the accuracy. Their staring continued, and above them, dark clouds started to swirl while portions of the sunlight broke through. Thalia's now sparking eyes narrowed and Naruto's own shining ones mimicked the action. Then, out of nowhere, Naruto's dream flashed across the front of his mind, consequently breaking some of his focus on the staring contest and breaking his connection with the sun, thus allowing Thalia's darkening clouds to cover the area. I win. Only because he lost his concentration, Annabeth retorted with an eye roll. I still won, Thalia shot back childishly while crossing her arms. You don't think that happens on my quest, do you? Naruto inquired to his past life. Helios hummed. It's possible, the fated god replied. I mean, how many dark corridors do you recall seeing in Camp Half-Blood? As much as I loathe to admit it, you're going to have to go to Camp Ju, that other camp. Naruto mentally sighed before breaking the staring contest with his girlfriend, shifting his gaze to the ground with a scowl on his face. Fine. You can go. Thalia, hearing the victorious words leave her boyfriend's lips, immediately lost the sparking in her eyes and the clouds slowly parted. Crossing her arms over her chest and smirking, the daughter of Zeus asked, was that so hard to say? Well, she has his smugness, said Poseidon with a shake of his head, getting Zeus to give him a smirk. You have no idea, the heir of Helios mumbled as he looked at her, his hands jamming themselves into his pockets. With a sigh, he looked up at the once again cleared sky before he spoke. Come on, let's go pack and get my car back from Uncle Hef's cabin. Smirking and looking at his girlfriend with a petty form of revenge in mind, he asked teasingly, unless you'd like to fly there. As far as Naruto was concerned, the punch in the arm was well worth the look of terror that crossed his girlfriend's face. Snickers broke out as Thalia pouted with an angry look on her face. How dare he suggest that? Well, here it is, said the tall African-American counselor for Cabin 9 as he led the couple into the garage that had been added onto the cabin for the sake of working on vehicles. Leo was beaming at seeing his older brother and was saddened that he would never really meet him. He sounded so awesome. But now, well, it was great to get a look at him. Hephaestus just sighed sadly at one of his most promising sons, gone before his time. The joined Aphrodite and Hephaestus Smilodon, Emery, curled up under a workbench littered with tools. What an interesting name, said Aphrodite. I still want one, said the pouting daughter of Athena. Her boyfriend rubbed her shoulder reassuringly. Naruto's unique eyes started to sparkle as he looked at his car, walking past Charles Beckendorf to the driver's seat. The handle looked to be made of actual chrome, rather than the false chrome that it had come with, and opening the door was slightly harder because of its weight. We stripped it down and replaced the frame with a hollow Stygian iron that took days to create, not to mention modifying the engine and gears to allow the car to retain its speed, Charles continued. Guess being your employee helped get that stuff, the Smith god said with a look of intrigue towards his uncle. Hades shrugged. Well, I'm sure he needed some perks besides living. He snickered a tad at his own joke while Apollo glowered at him. As he and Thalia watched Naruto slip into the dark leather seats and run his hands over the steering wheel's edge. Said wheel now had a Greek sun over the car horn, rather than the Dodge Ram shield that once marked it. If he bothered to look, Naruto would have seen the same sun on the front grille and that the license plate read BRNRUB3R. Oh man, Leo moaned, bouncing in his seat. He whined a bit as he looked the car over. What I wouldn't give to work on that hot rod. Annabeth shook her head with a smile on her face at his childish behavior. Always the eager little worker Leo was. Shutting the door and looking in from the window, Charles pointed out several new buttons along the wheel's edge to Naruto. This one here drops a small amount of oil from a spare container, in case you ever need to give someone the slip. Wow, do we get James Bond cars when we get older? Percy asked out loud. Everyone nodded in agreement to that question, except Thalia, who was pouting. She could never get one since she was a hunter, damn it. Nice. Both the pun and the add-on, Naruto complimented, and this one? Car spikes, the son of Hephaestus answered before crying out in alarm when Thalia, who had slipped into the passenger's side while the two were talking, tried to press the red button she had found when she flipped open a portion of the stick shift. Don't press that. You see a big red button, and you try to push it? Leo asked Thalia, as if she was mental. Have you not ever watched a car movie before? Oh, shut up, Thalia hissed at him, huffing away from the Smithchild's deadpan eyes. As though she were burned, Thalia retracted her hand, making Charles sigh in relief before he explained himself. That happens to activate the SOL engine's light speed. You named my engine SOL? Naruto asked in disbelief before he made a double take with wide eyes. Wait, light speed? Son of a, Leo cursed, gnawing on his bottom lip. Let me in there, he wailed pleadingly. I need to work on it. Leo, calm down, Piper said to him. No, he let out a fake sob. It's not fair. Well yeah, it's theoretical and we haven't gotten around to testing it, Charles shrugged. But you are a son of Apollo and Helios Heir, so why not put it in this? As to why we call it SOL, it doesn't stand for shit outta luck, but rather solar-oriented logistic engine. Or as some of my more humorous brothers call it, speed of light engine. Ha, well if it works, theoretically, you'd be going at the same speed as I used to with Zephyr and Zephyr's brethren, Helios idly commented. Before adding, that is, as long as you don't get burnt to a crisp from the excess heat. That's reassuring, Naruto mumbled to himself. Seems you got completion in the sky, Sunspot, said Ares in an attempt to rile up his brother. Well, I still got the cooler ride out of it. Let's see that thing morph. Before nodding to Charles, thanks, Charlie. I'll be sure to bring it back so that you and your cabin can continue to tinker with it. Oh, we've already started on another project, but thanks, Charles said. After the garage door opened, Naruto and Thalia were buckled in, their packs tossed in the back seat and Naruto's car roared to life. The tires squealed loudly, stopping all action in camp as everyone covered their ears, before Naruto put the car in gear and it peeled out of the cabin's garage. Charles watched the two speed away and scratched his head with a frown. Aw man. I forgot to ask why he wanted to take it. You don't want to know, yet, Jason answered with a tiny smirk. I want to work on that car, said Leo with a sigh. He looked up with a contemplating look on his face. Well, I guess I could always build one from scratch. A black suburban vehicle was speeding along the highway in the middle of Nevada, passing an accident in the far right lane. Driving the massive SUV was a handsome man of Cherokee descent, a dimpled chin, and cropped black hair. His equally dark eyes twinkled but showed sadness, and when questioned on it, he would always claim was caused by the pain carried throughout the generations of the Cherokee people. This was Tristan McLean, star of last summer's hit King of Sparta, and right now he was frustrated. Oh Tristan, said Aphrodite with a sigh, a smile on her face. Ares crossed his arms and grumbled in distaste. Pipes, can you just tell me why? He asked the girl seated next to him with her chin planted on her hand as she stared out the window. His 13-year-old daughter was dressed just like the tomboy she always was. Hey, I'm in it, Piper cheered with a big smile. Wait a second, Leo said, getting her attention. If you come in now, that means I might be coming in also. Leo cheered with her as they looked to Jason. The young blonde was grinning back at them. Seems the gang would be coming together after all. Her kaleidoscope-like eyes were most likely flickering from every car to the next they passed. Glancing quickly at his daughter, Tristan asked again, "Why did you take that pack of gum?" "Well, I know the problem now, and got it under control," said the slightly flustered Piper with an embarrassed smile. "I dunno, Dad. I thought you paid for it, so I put it in my pocket," his daughter replied sincerely, making him shake his head at her impulsive action. "ADHD, Piper argued weakly. He merged into the left lane safely behind a semi-truck with a large K and a sickle logo on the back. "Okay, that is just flat-out ominous," said Percy with a frown, getting nods of agreement all around. Piper looked over at him before crossing her arms and looking forward at the semi. "Next time would you check with me before you go and put something in your pocket?" he asked before looking at his daughter once again. "For goodness sake, Piper, you could have gotten in a lot of trouble." "Dad, watch out," Piper screamed, making him look forward as a body fell towards him. Seconds before impact, he reached over and threw his right arm across Piper as a secondary safety belt, knocking the volume on his radio and making some rock music blast to life as the body of a tall blonde teenager bounced off of the hood of his car to the side of the road. "Piper, did your dad just hit Naruto?" Jason asked with a surprised blink. "I think so," said Piper dumbfounded. "That is going to be an awkward meeting," said Leo. Tristan's foot slammed on the brake pedal as the truck in front of them did the same, leaving just enough room between them so a person could lie down. The airbags deployed, but thankfully did nothing more than at most bruise his chest and arm. Piper had shielded her own face with her arms, both of which were also likely bruised. As the airbags deflated, Tristan looked to his daughter, grabbing her shoulders and checking her for injuries. Dad, what about the guy you just hit?" Piper asked before they both turned and saw a man jump from the top of the semi to the road. He was wearing chest armor that Tristan had only seen when he was filming King of Sparta, combat pants, boots, and had a scarred left eye. The scarred man glared into their car before walking around them. Tristan looked into his rear-view mirror to see him going to the person that had hit his SUV. The person he picked up looked to be about 18 and was wearing a torn orange shirt. The left side of his face was bleeding heavily while the right had 3 scratches on his cheek. His arms were scraped badly, most likely from hitting the road, and his legs were most likely broken, if not shattered. "Damn, he got messed up," said Nico. "Vitakinesis, it'll do the trick." Apollo waved off, but he was worried about the situation his son was in. Though the next thing Tristan saw utterly surprised him. The teen lifted both of his battered arms to grab the scarred man's shoulder and pulled his head back, driving it forward into the scarred man's nose. The scarred man stumbled back before he was given a drop kick to push him over the barrier into the opposite lane. Just as the scarred man got up, a semi heading in the opposite direction ran him down, causing Tristan to pull the confused Piper into a hug as he tried to forget the horrific sight he just saw. "Ooh, that got some winces." "Thanks, Dad," Piper said. But it was just a skeleton warrior. It was cool for him to get run over. The driver's door of the semi's cab opened and the scarred man's twin stepped out, a handgun raised and shooting at the teen, causing Piper to scream and Tristan to pull her down with him below the windows to avoid being shot. He didn't know who was out there listening to him, but he prayed to whatever gods would listen, if they existed, that is. Aphrodite sighed, expelling a breath from her nose. "Yes, we do. That whatever was going on, he and Piper would come out of alive." "Well, you have to admit that it's a more interesting way to enter our world than how you did here." Leo shrugged with a teasing grin. "Shut up," said Piper with a blush as she grumbled at him. "It actually wasn't. It was way scarier." A few moments earlier, Naruto Uzumaki was drumming his hands on the steering wheel, being careful not to hit the emergency weapons that Hephaestus' cabin had installed to the rock station he and Thalia had agreed on. "So basically Thalia's station?" Annabeth asked with an amused look. "Hey, I can be fair with the radio," said Thalia, arguing albeit weakly more than normal. "Right," the blonde demi-goddess drawled out. "They've made great headway, getting from Camp Half-Blood to Omaha, Nevada the day before. They've been driving for nearly 2 hours already and were nearly outside of Utah." "Okay, that is some pretty good time," Percy admitted. Even he wasn't going that fast during his first quest. With the mist on his side, Hecate had been extremely helpful as of late for some reason. "Gee, I wonder why," said Apollo wolfishly and ducked under the coming swing. "Ha!" He failed to avoid the follow-up. "Ow." "Humph." Artemis had a smirk on her face at the successful blow. He was free to speed along the road at 120 miles per hour without drawing attention from the highway patrol. Not to mention continue to give his girlfriend heart attacks when it looked like he was about to plow through the car in front of him before merging to one of the empty lanes. Just like he did a second ago. "Oh, that ass," Thalia growled. "Sadly, Thalia, we all know where he received it from," said Artemis dryly and took a side glance at her brother, who pouted in return. He had no idea what she was insinuating. His driving skills were fantastic. "Whiskers," Thalia cried out in annoyance before thumping him on the arm. "Stop doing that, damn it." "Ah, but Thalia-chan, it's your own fault for thinking I'd ram into someone 5 times in a row," said the Guardian. "He raises an excellent point," Nico added, getting a growl from his cousin. "What?" "It's true," he smirked at her. With a smirk before flying through the lanes and going around the toll booths, and there goes Utah. "Just where the hell are we going anyway, Whiskers?" Thalia asked, annoyed at his lack of answers during the course of this trip. She had asked him when they first left camp, but he had said that he needed to focus on driving. After they pulled into a pit stop, where they miraculously were not attacked, and she asked again, he dodged her question by saying he needed to sleep. Her patience was really wearing thin and he'd better answer her soon or she might just kill him. Apollo started to hum some dramatic music, getting Thalia to look annoyed. Of course her other would be annoyed. Plus once she found out the truth, well, she hoped her other let the blonde boy have it. Hey, dying on a quest is one thing, dying by her hand is something entirely different. "Isn't that sweet?" said Hazel in a bland tone. Really, for Thalia, it could be. "That's for me to know and for you to go insane over, Thalia-chan," Naruto teased. "He really likes playing with lightning," Jason mumbled. He could see his sister getting annoyed. And he was not talking about the older blonde's girlfriend. Before furrowing his brow as a small car suddenly cut him off. He slowed down with a hard brake and glared at the car that mimicked him, while Thalia threw her arms to the dashboard in order to avoid colliding with it. "What the heck, Whiskers? Why don't you just go?" "Oh, you have got to be kidding me," the daughter of Zeus said in disbelief as she saw what he was glaring at. Sitting in the driver's seat and peering out the window was one of the original skeletons that had chased them the winter before, and climbing out of the passenger window was another with a machine gun in hand. "Wow, kinda forgot about those guys," said Percy, scratching the back of his head. "Why didn't they attack the camp like last time?" "You know what I really hate?" Naruto asked his girlfriend as the skeleton cocked his weapon and took aim. "I really hate undead people." Hades grumbled at that while Nico sighed. "It's not our fault someone else summoned them," he pouted with crossed arms. Naruto slammed on the brakes just as the skeleton started to fire his weapon at them. The bullets managed to scratch the hood of his car. "Oh, those bony assholes, you do not chip the paint," Apollo shouted in dismay. "How could they be so cruel?" "Those bastards," said Leo in agreement, making Naruto grunt in annoyance, before they started to strike in front of the car as the driver hit the brakes once more to stay near him. Naruto's foot moved to the accelerator and he peeled around the skeleton's Audi A8, which he thought was too nice a car for them. "It really is," Hephaestus pointed out with a grunt. Speeding past a black SUV on his right that was entering the highway before going into the center lane once more. "So, they're still around by the way," idly commented the blonde demigod before ducking as the rear window was shattered by bullets. "Gods above." "Son of a bitch," Thalia exclaimed as she released her replica of Athena's shield Aegis from its concealed state, holding it up behind them. "Smart thinking, Thalia-chan," complimented her boyfriend, shifting his bracelet to his right wrist. "Roar for me." In a flash of red that should have blinded him had he been a normal human, Naruto's Arcadia shield replica appeared. He pulled it off of his wrist quickly before handing it to Thalia. "You deflect and I'll drive." "I knew it was too easy," Thalia groaned as she held her boyfriend's shield along with her own. Well. If it ain't the boneheads," Q commented dryly as he started to deflect bullets. "And they've gotten better at aiming, fantastic. Oh, take it you sponge, said Hermes with a grin. Less commentary, fuzz face. Naruto grumbled as he merged once more to the far left lane. Looking in the side mirror at the sound of a loud horn, Naruto groaned in disbelief. You have got to be fucking kidding me. Another 2 skeletons were behind him driving an 18-wheeler that was gaining speed on them. Called it, said Percy in a smug tone. Naruto pushed down on the accelerator, but the damned black car full of skeletons was back in front of them, with the undead attacker still standing on the top. A third car, another black Audi A8, came to the side, and with the barrier on the left, Naruto found himself pinned. Now what shall he do? Athena asked, intrigued with how the blonde will get out of this mess. You want my help on this? Helios asked. That'd be nice, Naruto replied before grabbing Thalia's shoulder with his free hand and pushing her down below the window as the driving skeleton on their right started to fire at them with a handgun. Naruto leaned back and Thalia stayed down until the gunshots stopped, one nearly grazing Naruto's throat. Yes, help would be much appreciated, Naruto mentally screamed to his past life. Guns are so cheap for this, Thalia frowned, getting many nods from the other demigods and the gods themselves, save for Ares. It's not like we have handguns with celestial bronze pullets or something. Well, Annabeth's dad did come up with that idea. It could be possible, Percy pointed out while scratching the back of his head. Leo gained a thoughtful look while the Olympians shook their heads. Have Thalia shove the wannabe Aegis into her window, Helios suggested. Hey, Thalia complained with a pout. Her shield rocked. Naruto looked at Thalia and repeated his inner god's advice. The daughter of Zeus did just that, and when the skeleton turned to take aim once again was surprised and startled to the point that it swerved away, fleeing the sight of the horrid Medusa. See, it rocks, Thalia smirked. Percy rolled his eyes and said, yes, we all see. You're just jealous, said Thalia countered, hearing the appeal in his tone. Jam it into the window, Naruto instructed before grabbing the once discarded Arcadia shield and jamming it in front of Thalia. He set the car on cruise control and reached into his pocket to pull his seal notebook out. The idea for his notebook came to him a few months back after looking back on the quest for Artemis and wondering how differently it could have gone had he have instant access to some of his things instead of just carrying scrolls around in his seal-covered jacket, which was put away in Thalia's duffel bag with his kunai due to his own cockiness. I wonder where he got that from, Heir asked aloud, getting Apollo to grumble. Apollo's genes shine through once more, Helios joked. Thank you for answering, Helios, the Queen of Heaven smiled widely. Apollo pouted and muttered about stupid friends always teasing him. As Naruto berated himself for not thinking about the possibilities of running into trouble on the road. Usually Taish smiled upon him, but it seems she had her gaze elsewhere at the moment. Wish I had that luck, Percy murmured aloud. Everyone gave him a sympathizing glance. Gods knew he needed it. Shut up, Helios, Naruto grumbled aloud as he tore out a weight seal after setting up cruise control. He pressed the seal onto the steering wheel beneath his left hand, and then again with the right. A flare of chakra to memorize the amount of weight he was applying to either side of the wheel, and voila! Naruto Uzumaki, Namikaze, was the first shinobi, demigod, mortal to ever invent an autopilot for a four-wheeled vehicle. He should probably take notes for the Hephaestus kids. Now that sounds interesting, said Leo as he made note of the idea. He was so going to try that later. But since there were more pressing matters, skeletons trying to kill him and his girlfriend, he'd hopefully remember later. Stay put and don't move, Naruto ordered his girlfriend before he opened his door and climbed out onto the rooftop. Naruto Uzumaki, you god's damned lunatic, get back in here, Thalia screamed after her boyfriend, looking at the empty driver's seat with horror. I am really hating him right now, said Thalia as she ranted along with her other. Come on, he seems to have most things under control, said Hazel in the older blonde's defense. Not the point. Naruto kicked the door shut and slid onto the hood of his car as the skeleton reloaded. Praying to his dad and aunt for little help in landing, Naruto leapt from the hood of the Challenger onto the black Audi A8 the skeletons were using. The armed skeleton obvious did not expect the blonde to do this, but raised his gun anyway. after Naruto briefly berated himself for leaving his quiver and bow in the backseat of the Challenger. "You're an archer, kiddo, why leave it?" Apollo asked himself as he palmed his head. "Simple, he's your reckless son. Not helping me feel better, Arte." "It's not my job to," said the goddess of the hunt with a smirk. The Guardian slipped his hands around the barrel of the machine gun, pointing it up and, with a move Mark had shown him, Spartan kicked the skeleton in the chest. "Ah, the classics," said Ares, wiping away an imaginary tear of pride with a finger. The undead assassin let out a hiss as it, unlike the blonde shinobi, did not have any way to adhere itself onto the Audi and thus was sent soaring in front of the car. It hit the pavement and splattered apart into multiple pieces. Naruto next went after the driver of the Audi, sliding down onto the front hood and sticking to it with chakra. Bringing his fist back, Naruto drove it into the windshield and cracked the laminated glass. The skeleton immediately raised a handgun and shot at him, shattering the windshield. Naruto avoided the bullets and glass by rolling to his side. Then, he reached into the hole created by the driver and grabbed the gun that was immediately pointed at him, struggling with the skeleton, who was too strong for its own good, that wielded it. The struggle caused the car to merge unannounced into the next lane, earning both the unintentional rider and the driver many a pissed-off horn. Finally, Naruto won out by slamming the skeleton's hand into the dash, breaking off fingers and causing the gun to fall into the passenger's seat. "Nice move," Piper commented. "Well, it seems really simple. Why didn't he do it before?" Nico asked. "Heat of the moment. Simple," Thalia stated, elbows on knees with her palms supporting her chin. Grabbing the skull of his undead foe, Naruto snarled at it before pulling back. The skull popped off after a moment of struggle. "Holding the skull like one would in Hamlet," Naruto said. "To be, or not to be? Yeah, fuck it." "Aw, at least finish the quote," said Apollo with crossed arms and a pout. "Nah, it's so overused," said Hermes, waving off his brother's complaint. "'Tis not," Apollo countered with a hand over his heart as he spoke poetically. "'Tis right to do, simple and true." He stood up and turned around, chucking the chomping skull trying to bite him onto an upcoming overpass. "Oh come on, at least stay dead once your head is off," said Percy with a groan. "The dead are very stubborn, Percy," Nico pointed out sagely. "Tell me about it." The car he was on started to wobble mid-lane and veered to the right, making Naruto gain a look of concern. "Should have thought that through," Helios commented before asking, "Why aren't you going God mode again?" "Simple, just because he has it, doesn't mean he should be over-reliant on his power." Athena spoke with a shake of her head. "Are you kidding me? I have no idea what the mist will disguise me as. I don't want to cause a pile-up," Naruto said. "That too," said Athena. "Didn't he cause a pile-up already?" Leo asked with a raised brow, making Frank pout at the missed car chase while Zhong's father grinned at the carnage. Quieting for a moment before adding, "Again. There it is." "You make a valid point," Helios agreed before laughing. "For all we know, the mortals would probably see that giant robot covered in flames that was in that film you watched with Hades' children last week." "Movie night, sounds fun," said Nico quietly, only the tiniest of frowns on his face. Naruto snickered at the thought as being seen as Optimus Prime. "Now that would be awesome," said Leo with stars in his eyes. His father nodded in agreement. Before he used Hirishin to reappear at Thalia's side in the driver's seat. Thalia jumped in her seat before punching him in the arm roughly. "You fucking asshole, do you know how badly you scared me?" "At least she says, me, now," Annabeth teased lightly, getting a snort from the hunter in question. "Ow, Thalia-chan, that hurt," the blonde demigod complained as he rubbed his definitely bruised arm. A round of bullets took out his rearview mirror and Naruto turned to look behind him with a scowl. "Oh right. There were 2 cars and a Peterbilt." Naruto smiled apologetically at Thalia and opened his door once again. "Well," he started to before turning around and grabbing his quiver and bow. Holding both in one hand, he nodded to his shield before speaking. "Put Q in the backseat window." "I demand compensation for this," growled the shield's spirit in annoyance. "Do you know how hard it is to pump enough chakra through this form and remove dents?" "I'll replenish your pools when this is all over," Naruto promised before opening his car door. Thalia grabbed his shoulder and stopped him from moving. Damn right, girl, Thalia smirked to herself. Oh no you don't, not again. The punk demi-goddess snapped. You're crazy, Whiskers. Batshit crazy, we can just outrun them. Thalia, would you rather be run off the road by the truck and possibly die? Or would you rather I take care of the skeletons now so we can get to where we need to go without any more issues? Naruto inquired. Thalia ground her teeth and narrowed her electric blue eyes. You're telling me everything about this quest after this. Do you understand me? She asked sternly, getting a nod from her boyfriend before releasing his shoulder. He'd really better, the hunter muttered, as a frown marred her face. He pulled her into a kiss that she wanted to kill him for breaking before climbing out of the car once again. Well, at least the kisses make it worth it, said Aphrodite as she smiled at the hunter, who amazingly had started to develop a tougher skin for all the teasing. Thalia's stern glare turned into a worried look as she grabbed the Arcadia shield and moved it to the rear window. Kit's gonna be fine, Q reassured her. Sure he's an idiot, but he's a damn good fighter. Ow, alright, one more bullet hits me and I'm going to flip out. Naruto leapt onto the hood of the 18-wheeler's cab, preparing his bow and a trick arrow. The passenger skeleton raised his machine gun and shot at the blonde, making him jump up to the top of the cab. The driving skeleton pulled his handgun out and shot up into the roof. This caused Naruto to backflip onto the trailer and allowed the passenger skeleton to climb out onto the top of the Peterbilt cab without hindrance. It followed Naruto onto the trailer, turning to the side as Naruto shot one of his drill bit arrows at him. Damn it, they're still good at avoiding my arrows, Naruto mumbled to himself. He growled as he came to another conclusion. And I can't use the solar flare because again, I don't know how that will affect the regular humans. Woe is the teen fighting atop a truck, sighed his past life. And you're not helping either, Naruto growled. We do enjoy the commentary though, Hades said with a ghost of a smile, getting nods all around, except from the reading Hestia who huffed lightly. As he ducked under the rain of bullets that were fired at him. Pulling another arrow out, he rolled to the right as the skeleton shot where he was. Knocking the arrow, the son of Apollo let it fly with a grin on his face as the head started to beep. The arrowhead flew straight into the barrel as the skeleton took aim once more. He still holds excellent aim, Artemis complimented, making her twin smirk. Hearing the beeping, the skeleton tossed its weapon aside, where it fell between the crevasse of the two guardrails. The small muffled boom made Naruto laugh. Ha, faked you out. Smoke bomb arrow for the win. And a good deal of cunning as well, Athena added in kind. The skeleton's empty eye sockets narrowed and a deep hiss left its mouth before it pulled out a combat knife about the size of Naruto's forearm. Naruto gulped as he took in the size of the knife before he muttered, "So now I'm fighting Rambo apparently." Lucky punk, said Ares. He loved that film series. Rambo, hissed lowly again before charging forward and taking a swipe at Naruto. Naruto leaned back from the attack and reached for an arrow, only to find that nothing was there. Looking down at himself, the blonde groaned as he found a large tear across his shirt where the strap of his quiver once rested over. Looking behind him, Naruto's shoulders slumped as the quiver rolled off the trailer, the arrows falling out all over the highway. Okay, that has to be Nemesis' fault, Helios chimed in with an audible frown. She must be taking me into account now that you've been practicing with my abilities. Geez, she loves to mess with people, said Hermes as he shook his head in disapproval. It is her job, Demeter pointed out blandly. The god of thieves conceded to his aunt's point. Sadly true. Great, and since I can't use those abilities the odds are against me. Well, there's always ninjutsu, Naruto said only to go on the defensive as Rambo slashed at him before he could attempt said techniques. You've gotta be friggin' kidding me. Naruto raised his bow and deflected the knife from striking at him once more. He then spun it around and took a swing at Rambo's femur. The skeleton blocked with his knife and brought his right hand out to punch Naruto in the side of his face with a hook. Naruto went with the momentum, almost dancing on the back of the trailer until he was closer to the edge. Spitting some of his unique golden red blood to the side, Naruto collapsed his bow and attached it to his belt. He settled into a stance for Gama Ken and offered a hand up. Well then, bring it on, Rambo, Naruto grumbled as he stopped the skeleton's blade-wielding hand with his arm. Rambo tried to blindside him with another hook punch, but Naruto was ready, using his other hand to catch the fist. He grinned at his foe and asked, "What now?" The kick in the gut should have been seen coming. Really it should have. But Naruto had let his victory over Atlas get to his head and he slacked off over the past few months. Course your kid would get sloppy, Ares snickered to his brother. Aw, shut it, the sun god grumbled. Focusing on caring for his charges took more priority anyway. Well, he had good reason at least. Hades defended the boy, getting some looks from his brothers and the other Olympians. When even the demigods turned to give him looks of disbelief, he snorted and mumbled, "Oh come on, even I can compliment someone." So as he stumbled back, Naruto cursed himself for feeling so damn cocky these past few months and thanked the gods for the wake-up call. "You're welcome," all the gods said. He momentarily disabled his chakra at the soles of his feet to slide back away from the overhead stab in the back Rambo had attempted while he was doubled over. Unfortunately, this had the adverse effect of having him slide to the edge of the trailer. Righting himself just as he started to teeter behind the truck, Naruto was once more on the defensive as Rambo unleashed a surprisingly powerful amount of combos. What really got him though was the slash that had managed to cut him above his left eyebrow. He spun as some of his skin was torn between leaving with the blade or staying on his head, leaving his back wide open for the follow-through kidney punch that sent him falling to the hood of the black SUV driving behind the truck. "And that's how my other meets Naruto," Piper concluded with a giggling smirk while her boyfriend shook his head. His last thought before hitting the hood of the SUV was, "Gods, I hope Annie and Waterboy are having a better time than I am right now." "I kinda doubt it," Percy stated blandly. As Naruto fell towards the hood of the McLean's SUV, in Camp Half-Blood, Percy was cursing his luck as he and Annabeth fought off 3 giant golden scorpions. "See? Yes, Percy. We see you're getting better at predicting how yours and consequently our luck is," Annabeth said with an eye roll. Percy just pouted. Apparently it was supposed to be Naruto's turn to decide on a war game, but since he and Thalia left on some super important and secret quest, that left the game up to Quintus. The jerk decided to pair up campers in 2 and hunt down giant scorpions, or something along those lines. Percy didn't really understand the significance. He rolled out of the way of a stinger striking him, and when he stood he used Riptide to deflect another stinger. "Quintus is so dead after this," Percy informed his partner, who was ducking a scorpion's claws and deflecting a stinger with her dagger. "Get in line," Annabeth retorted with a frown. "This is nuts. Is it because of who your dad is?" "Oh, gods, they're still arguing?" Percy asked, recalling his own spat with his girlfriend at the time. "You always blame everything on me," Percy complained as he deflected another stinger. "Maybe it's your mom's fault." "Excuse me?" Athena asked coolly. "That was the other me," said Percy quickly, just pointing it out. "Why would it be my mom's fault?" Annabeth asked as she deflected a claw with her dagger. "For that matter, why are we still arguing about this? We have to find a place to hide." "And like always, Annabeth points out the smartest move," said Thalia, getting her younger friend to smile. "About time you came up with something smart, wise girl," the son of Poseidon said with a grin as the blonde daughter of Athena stumbled and nearly got hit by a stinger if she hadn't rolled out of the way. "Stop calling me that, seaweed brain," the flustered girl growled before looking around. Her gray eyes widened when they landed on Zeus' fist. "And so the plot thickens," Nico smirked. He turned to the daughter of the wisdom goddess and asked, "Seriously, how did no one ever notice that?" "It wasn't like we were actively looking for them," Annabeth pointed out weakly with a light flush. Avoiding another claw, she grabbed onto Percy's arm and pulled him with her, both of them ducking under a swung stinger. Percy looked nervous as they approached the slight hole between 2 boulders. "This is going to be a tight fit." "Just shut up and come on," Annabeth instructed with a frown before squeezing herself into the hole. Percy quickly shuffled in after her, wincing when a scorpion's claw grazed his back where Atlas' spear had. The two moved further into their safe hole when a scorpion got smart and tried to shove its claw in after them. After a few minutes of trying and failing to get the 2 teens huddled close together, the scorpions hissed and skittered off. Annabeth and Percy shared a sigh of relief before a rock fell near Annabeth, prompting her to turn her head and gasp as she saw a light. Nudging her partner, Annabeth said, "Percy, look at this." And the fun begins. Annabeth grimaced at the memory of her quest, wondering how her other would handle it.